We live on TikTok too. What's up, TikTok? Everywhere. We gonna start off. I seen this video a couple weeks ago, but I forgot about it. I'm not gonna lie. Hold on, I ain't gonna lie though, chat. Let me talk about this. Cause why do they offer juice at breakfast, but they offer milk at lunch? That has never made sense to me. I don't know why. The juice is more applicable and more necessary for lunch. I don't want chocolate milk with some wings, bro. That don't ever make sense. So that's one thing I can never get through.
Public school in America, the place that I have a love-hate relationship with. Because it's the place that I have some of my best memories of laughter and joy with some of the people I'm still friends with to this day. However, school was also a part of some of my least favorite memories. It's also the only place where you can go to eat a greasy-ass pepperoni pizza, some tater tots made without a lick of love, a hard-to-peel orange that would have your fingers smelling like citrus for the rest of the school day. And the best part of it all is you get to wash all of that down with a carton of milk.
Just looking at this, bro, man, I can't wait to graduate, bro. If you don't got money on you, bro, and school lunch is all you can eat, bro, it'd be the most saddest day of your life, bro. Because when I do have cash, bro, I be trying to save my mom. I'm not trying to always buy something from the vending machine, but, like, and sometimes they be closing the vending machines down because niggas don't be cleaning up after themselves. So, like, bro, if we ain't have to deal with that, bro. The tater tots, boy.
Of your choice, choosing between white or chocolate milk. And that last part always confused me. Even when I was in school, I could never understand why the only drink choices was milk, especially when we could have just gotten water.
Now that I'm older, I'm genuinely wondering, why the f was water never an option? School lunches genuinely had us eating pizza with milk. What the f type combination is that?
No shit.
Wow. So it's all
See, it used to
mixed.
be these breakfast pizzas right here. And then, it's just looking at this, or it used to come in that little plastic, them little round pizzas, bro. Them shits, they was good, but then looking at it right now, they was really feeding us like bull, bro. Like,
Sense now.
no sense.
Why them public school bathrooms used to smell like bounce that early in the morning. Yo, this is crazy. But one thing we can all agree on, if you're a public school baby, Fridays, when that pizza came out, if you had that first lunch, felt like you was eating Domino's, nigga. But chocolate milk to wash it down is
Crazy,
insane
bro.
work.
Keep in mind, the juice is still available, but they choose to keep it in the fridge for tomorrow's breakfast or the following week's breakfast. So, like, bro, some of the milk, bro, like, once you drink it, it don't even taste like milk, bro. I don't know what be in that, bro.
Milk Maurice, he got a pretty cause pink cause a nigga fell in love with it.
I'm getting so many flashbacks thinking about it.
I got a thing for her, never ever let her get away from me.
So in this video, we'll figure out why public schools in America only served us milk. And I'm just talking about public schools because private schools are not the same. I went to a private school for 1 year in high school, and lunchtime was completely different. Firstly, on an unrelated note, there was zero food fights.
I know at a private school, that food be immaculate, bro. Gourmet. Well, let me see. What type of lunch do private schools be having? Lunch. Man. Plates. Them niggas get plates. No plastic nut, bro. They get plates, bro. Wow. Los Angeles. Man. See, like, this not even that bad. This not even that bad, bro. Like, there's no way, with all the taxes people pay and stuff, like, why school lunch be looking so depressing, bro? There's no shot, bro. That makes no sense, bro. Like,
And if you attended a bad or overcrowded public school, you know that food fights is a common thing during lunch, where someone throws a milk carton in a sea of people, and then that makes some of them kids want to get some get back, and before you know it, it's a full-blown food fight, which is also a sign of how comfortable we have gotten in America with having so much food that we wasted on things like food fights, but I'm not gonna get into that. But one of
Not gonna lie, sometimes you be having no choice but to throw the food away. Sometimes you gotta throw it out, bro. You take one look at it, bro. Like, I be trying to eat everything off my plate, but then I really look at what I'm eating. I'm just like, bro, I wouldn't even feed this to like home, like, man.
the reason there are zero food fights at private school is because you have to pay for your food. And when I say pay for food, I'm not talking like how we used to have to pay for lunch at public schools, where it was only $1 and some change depending on your city, or if you was on reduced lunch, it was just a couple coins. I'm talking about when you go through the private school lunch line, you're paying real world prices, anywhere from about $8 to $12 a day for lunch.
So even with the, damn, wait, aren't y'all automatically on meal plans since you're already paying? You gotta pay to go to school and the food too. Nah, what? Nah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Depending on what you get, and more or less depending on what city you live in. So people are not gonna throw that food and waste their money, and you can get kicked out of private school, so most kids are on their best behavior. But private school also serve different types of food, usually higher quality than public schools because you're paying more. And this also translated into the drink options you have. So when I was at private school for that year, I don't remember them offering any milk. This doesn't mean they didn't, I just don't remember it because they had fountain drink machines for us. So you would just choose whatever drink you wanted, like you would.
Anytime I've seen these at Zaxby's, bro.
But at a restaurant. And no one is choosing milk in that situation, even if they did offer it. But as I mentioned, private school had those options because parents are paying directly for those things and for the kids to go to those schools. And I use the words directly because public school is government funded, which means public schools have to follow the government rules and systems. But the government gets its money from taxes, which taxes are paid by the people, which includes the parents. So when you think about it, public school parents are still technically paying for their kids' school in a roundabout way, just not as direct as paying for private school tuition and lunchtime with real world prices. Because public schools get 40 to 60% of their overall funding from private
taxes, public school revenue. Damn. Yeah, white people. Yeah, okay, yeah.
property tax. That is why public schools on wealthier sides of towns are nicer compared to public schools on poorer sides of towns. It's because wealthier neighborhoods have houses that have higher property values, which means they're getting taxed more on that property tax, which equals more tax revenue, which equals more funding. And on the flip side, poor neighborhoods a lot of times have houses that don't value as doesn't have as much value to them, so that means they're getting taxed less on the property value, which then means less funding to that public school. And I mentioned 40 to 60%. The rest of that public school funding to get to that 100% comes from state funding, which the state gets their money from taxes as well, like income tax and sales tax, and they distribute that funding in the same way where rich neighborhoods get more and poor neighborhoods get less. But that's beside the point, because whether it's a rich public school or a poor public school, the students are still being served milk. So that still begs the question, out of all the possible drink options we could have had with lunch, why was milk the government's choice? And to understand this, we need to go back to America in the 1940s.
Alright, let's learn the history, bro. There's no way it stretches that
So,
far.
it's December 7th.
Because they all blame Michelle Obama. But, like, there's no way one lady made a rule for the entire ecosystem to where, like, milk just had to be served with pizza. Ain't no way. There's no way. There's no way.
1941, and Japan decided to attack the US naval base at Pearl Harbor. And the next day, America declared war on Japan, making this the official date America entered World War II.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
This meant that America now needed to organize the American people in preparation for this war. And this is when America started the draft.
The Draft Lottery, a live report on tonight's picking of the birth dates for the draft,
which required all American men from the ages of 21 to 35 to sign up to fight for their country. Well, America technically started the draft a year before this.
Actually doing that right now. Hey, I ain't gonna lie. Yo, I live in an odd country, I ain't gonna lie. I just be confused on like what we really be doing. We have too much money to be fighting with. Like, we have a lot to lose. I don't know.
Attack because they had a feeling that they were going to get involved in this war in some kind of way. However, this draft revealed something shocking about the American people in the 1940s, which is that 1/3 of the men were unhealthy and unfit to even fight in this war. About 30 to 40% were ejected by the military during the draft for reasons including malnutrition, poor dental health, infectious disease, poor eyesight, physical deformities, underweight or underdeveloped body. They were basically Steve Rogers before getting the super soldier serum. And on a side note, this is loosely what the comic book Captain America was based off of, because that comic was based around this time in the 1940s. And Steve Rogers was an example of this underweight, malnutritious body that was unfit for war. And so he had to take a super soldier serum that ended up turning him into Captain America. But in the real world, these problems were widespread, popularly among poor and rural populations. And the reason for this was because many of these men grew up during the Great Depression, which was from 1929 to about 1939. And during this period, unemployment reached about 25% of Americans. Many families struggled to buy enough food. Diets lacked important nutrients like calcium, protein, and vitamins. And children often ate diets heavy in bread, potatoes, cheap grains, and limited meat or dairy options. Those diets could lead to stunted growth and weaker physical developments. So when America started drafting soldiers and realizing a large portion of their population wasn't physically qualified for war, it became a national security issue. Because if that trend continued, it meant America could end up with a population too weak to defend the country. And in a world where nations compete for military power and global influence, that can cause the United States to struggle or even fall behind other countries. Therefore, this triggered major changes in public health thinking. Essentially, the government honestly could care less about the American people's health prior to this moment in time. Basically, it was their realization how it could start affecting America's power and influence on the world. So leaders concluded that child nutrition had to improve nationally, not just for health, but for national security. So after World War II ended in
So basically, we were too weak. So changing school lunch would let us know that just in case, we would be healthy enough to go fight. There's no way that's the basis of school lunch story. That's actually insane. So all them tater tots, all them chocolate milks, them fat-frees, is to prepare us just in case if we need to go and fight. Ah, man. You learn something new every day.
1945, a year later, the government passed the National School Lunch Act on June 4th, 1946, which started the National School Lunch Program, which required all public schools to serve a meal that included a protein, a grain, fruit or vegetables, and a half pint of milk. When you think back on your school lunches, doesn't this sound pretty familiar to what was on your school tray? And that's because this was the moment that milk was now mandatory in school lunches. And so when I look at the requirements for the National School Lunch Program, I can understand why protein, grain, fruit, vegetables were chosen for lunch, because it just makes sense for a well-balanced meal. But why not just pair that with water? Like, what made the government choose milk to be a part of the lunch requirement?
I'm saying though, hold on. Why is water in the vending? Why do we have to pay for water in the vending machine? Because wouldn't you buy milk at the store? Wait, but you buy water at the store. That was dumb. That was dumb. No. But we got water fountains. But to get a bottled water, you gotta pay for it. You see what I'm saying? Like it's like circular. Like nothing makes sense. This is capitalism at its finest. That's facts. Yeah, that's what this is.
Where that war we just talked about, World War II, played a part again. So what happened was you had that war that required millions of American men to fight for the country. About 16 million men to be exact. And all these men required food, you know, to survive. Therefore, the government had to feed them. So the government used this money from taxes to buy food from American farmers.
We pay taxes to the government. They put it towards the food, crops, milk, soldiers. Gives them. Oh, so we help the military out. And some people be avoiding that. Elon Musk, he be avoiding paying taxes, bro. Trump probably do too. So it's... Man, I can't say that.
Farmers and food producers in order to feed the military. During the war, the US government actually asked farmers to increase production. And the government did this because the food was needed for the soldiers, as mentioned, and food was also needed for allies. The US even shipped food to Europe. Programs like price guarantees, wartime farm subsidies, and production incentives encouraged farmers to expand and increase output. And included in this was the dairy farmer, because dairy was a major part of the military rations. Milk itself wasn't actually shipped fresh to soldiers overseas because it spoils quickly. So dairy processing plants turned the milk from the cows into other products that could last longer. So the military was really rocking with powdered milk, evaporated milk, butter, cheese, processed cheese, and canned dairy products. Powdered milk especially became extremely important because it lasts a long time, is lightweight, and can be rehydrated easily. So during this time, being a farmer was very lucrative because you had a constant demand from the government. You had the government telling you to increase your supply because the demand is so high to feed these soldiers. So farmers invested heavily in more cows, larger farms, better production technology, and the farmers did it. Dairy production was now at an all-time high. They had built an agricultural system capable of producing enormous amounts of milk and dairy products like never before.
Every day, a big truck comes to take the farmer's milk to the milk plant. All the milk goes through a pasteurizer.
That's how milk.
But then the war ended, so that military demand essentially collapsed overnight. But that dairy production was still very high because farmers had already expanded. Cows were still producing milk, infrastructure had been built. You can't just tell a cow to stop producing milk. So suddenly the country had more milk than American people were ever buying, instantly creating a dairy market that had more supply than demand. And if you remember anything from your high school economics class, that's not a great thing for business.
I just learned this a couple months ago. So this right here is supply and demand, yeah. So the equilibrium point is like where they meet in the middle. So that means the demand and the supply. No, I'm done.
That situation worried policymakers.
Oh, I ain't see that word quantity. I ain't
that's
see
not
quantity. The demand, yeah, the quantity goes up, the price goes up. I did not pay attention. I'm not
great thing for business. That situation worried policymakers because falling farm prices could collapse rural economies. And rural America was a huge part of the economy during this time. In the early 1900s and 1940s, a large percentage of Americans lived in rural areas. More specifically, roughly 40 to 60% of Americans. That means about 50 to 60 million people were living in farming or rural communities. So when farms failed, it doesn't just affect farmers. It affects feed suppliers, equipment manufacturers, trucking, food processing, rural banks, and the small town as a whole. So when farm prices crashed, the entire regions collapsed economically. The government wanted to prevent that. And this was because they had a similar experience happen some years prior where the supply was higher than the demand, and this caused issues. So to prevent this, the government had two choices. Option one, force farmers to produce less, which was very unpopular politically at the time and still today. because farmers hate production limits, and it also is really hard to limit production when it comes to farming because agriculture runs on biological cycles and long-term investments that can't be quickly turned on or off. And if I'm being honest, when I was learning about this, I was like, yeah, why didn't they just go with option one? Because if there's too much milk, why not just reduce the number of cows and sell the meat? But apparently milk cows aren't the same as meat cows because they have lower quality meat, whatever that means. But you also can't sell them for as much because of that low quality meat, which kills the margins or whatever. And getting a bunch of dairy farmers to just delete their cows and sell the meat would also just fuck up the beef farmers' economics. So I started to see the problem and why they went with option two, which was just to increase the demand of dairy to balance out the supply, which was much easier politically. So that's what the government chose, to basically stabilize the dairy market by creating guaranteed buyers, similar to how the military was a guaranteed buyer. This is where schools come in. So let's zoom out for a minute.
I mean, yeah, because milk is important. You basically put milk in at least 60 to 70% of everything you eat. Cereal, when you baking like muffins, cookies. Or like brownies, like you put milk in a lot of things. So milk is very important when it comes ice cream, you know what I'm saying? Like milk is important. So I think it was a business move, but at the same time it was a necessity because a lot of people do, when you go to the store, milk is probably at least one of the first 5 things on your list almost every time.
So the government had 2 issues at this time. First issue, 1/3 of Americans were unhealthy, which became a national security issue because if the trend continued to go up, America could end up with a population too weak to defend itself in the world of global power and influence. Second issue, farmers had too much supply and not enough demand, which would cause agricultural prices to collapse. And when prices drop below the cost of production, farmers can't make any money to cover their expenses like feed, equipment, land payments, and labor. This would push many farms into bankruptcy, which didn't just hurt farmers, it threatened entire rural economies that depended on agriculture. So to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, they decided to pass the National School Lunch Act. And the reason milk was chosen instead of water was because it would help stabilize dairy farmers, and milk is packed with nutrients like calcium, protein, vitamin D. Providing milk in school was seen as a simple way to improve children's diets, stabilize the farming supply and demand, and address the broader national concern that the population was becoming physically weaker. And that decision from the 1940s is the reason why we have milk in public schools today. Now, is milk being pushed in schools a good thing or a bad thing? So it has a good side and a bad side. So the good side about milk being in schools is that it does have nutrition and it does help stabilize the dairy farmer. But the bad side of it is a few things. First, everybody can't drink milk, or at least shouldn't drink it because, of being lactose intolerant.
You got something to drink?
I got some milk. It's in the fridge. You gotta go get it.
Yeah, no, I get some milk. Yeah, that's cool. I can go get some milk. Oh. Yeah, bro, you good in there? You alright? Huh? Yeah. I'm just using the bathroom.
Bro, are you lactose intolerant? Are you a grown man and can't drink milk?
A lot of people in America and in the world, if we're being honest, is lactose intolerant. Your likelihood of being lactose intolerant actually varies a lot by your ethnicity. Around 65 to 70% of African Americans, 90% of East Asians, 70 to 80% of Native Americans, and over 50% of many Latino populations experience lactose intolerance. Meanwhile, only about 5 to 15% of Europeans are actually lactose intolerant because dairy has been a major part of their diet for thousands of years, which can make the whole milk carton thing difficult for kids that is lactose intolerant to deal with while in school. And lastly, this increase in dairy production over the years in, this unnatural way of getting as much milk as you can from as many cows as you can basically have created a climate control issue. Because since the 1940s, total milk production in the United States has more than tripled, even though the number of dairy farms has basically decreased. And this is thanks to our capitalistic structure that has removed a lot of family dairy farms were these huge dairy farming infrastructures, which modern dairy operations today produce far more milk per cow than farms did decades ago. But while this efficiency has helped make milk cheaper and more widely available, it also means much larger concentrations of cows in fewer places, which creates environmental issues. Because large dairy operations, with all their cows, generate enormous amounts of cow manure that can pollute waterways and soil if not properly managed. And dairy cows produce methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. And methane is important because it traps heat. So when industries like large-scale dairy farming produce a lot of methane, it can contribute to global warming and climate change. And, global warming matters because when the climate changes, it affects almost everything we depend on, like our food systems, weather patterns, coastlines, and ecosystems. You know how like when wintertime comes and it feels colder than you remember, or where I'm at in the South, summers just feel way more hot than it was than I remember being a kid. It's a reason for this. It's because climate is changing. And when climate shifts too quickly, it can disrupt those systems and create issues for both animals, nature, and even us. Just as simple as us not wanting to go outside when it's too hot. But with all that being said, this video had me down a bunch of different rabbit holes because I started off just curious about why schools gave us milk and ended up learning about farming economics, policies, and World War II. And seeing how all those things connect, it changed my thought. Like, cause I originally thought the reason milk was pushed in school was just because of lobbying efforts by dairy organizations. And if you're unaware of what lobbying is, it's basically when industries or organizations try to influence government decisions by meeting with lawmakers, funding research, running marketing campaigns, and advocating for policies that benefit their industry specifically. And I was just gonna make a whole video centered around lobbying and how it negatively affects America because it's a system where influence often follows money. And industries with the most money can have the loudest voices in shaping policies that allow them to make more money, which in turn can screw everyone else and create a system that, we currently live in where policies have been made for the rich while fucking over everyone else.
How do billionaires get away with illegal shit? I thought the rules applied to everyone. No, we love following the law. The government just makes it legal for us. What? Yeah. Let's say you own a factory with working conditions.
Cause it's like, say like a rich guy, right? Because he has a lot more to offer than a person who doesn't really have that much, of course he's gonna get a leeway on a lot of different things that the broker person probably wouldn't have the capabilities to. And that's only because of rank. Everything in, politics, economics, it's all on rank. Whether if you a high selling product compared to a low selling product, 9 times out of 10, everybody's gonna take a chance on the high selling product. That's just how ethics go, bro.
By I mean illegal. If you also start paying minimum wage, a few of them are going to get pissed off and start protesting. What happens then? Now, if you're a company like Boeing, there's easier ways to take care of it. But if you're not, that's when you start lobbying. What's that? Okay, look, if a few politicians hear about the protests, they'll start creating new laws. These laws will increase salaries and give better conditions to the workers. It's good for them, but bad for me. What do you do then? I just need to find my people. What? Yeah, that's the beauty of Congress. If there are politicians that support the law, there are always going to be politicians that don't. Those are my people. Just start donating a money to them till they're large enough to control other politicians. I'll keep doing this so that more and more
money rule the world, bro. Give them niggas a little hush money, you ain't gotta worry about nothing after that. That's with politics and everything else.
People start joining my side until I get the majority support. Isn't that bribing? Oh no, it's just donating. But this way, the law gets blocked and I don't need to use any Boeing methods to take care of my problem. It's all legal. How does the government allow this? Well, as long as they get paid, no one gives a shit. This is perfect, since we can create new laws as well. What? It's simple. If money can convince Congress to stop a law, it can convince them to create one as well. If taxes get too high, we can change that. If regulations get too strict, we can change that. If salaries start increasing, guess what? We can change that. What do you mean by we? Well, it's not just me. If I can lower taxes, other companies benefit from it too. This is why they form alliances and combine their donations to get even more money, which means more control. Holy shit. Exactly. We don't just control the government. We've become a part of it. Welcome to the real world.
And I was ready to make a video on how that was the reason why milk was in school, but I realized it was much more to the story. But don't get me wrong, as I was doing research, dairy lobbying groups definitely played.
So does that mean everything is corrupt, bro? There's no way. Everything you know good and well might be corrupt. Cause think about like sports games, bro. There's no way some of them be rigged. But then you can't say that because it's live, so like it would have to be highly choreographed. But like you just think, the fact you even gotta think about if a game is, you know, pre-planned or already in place for the certain team to win. Like I don't know, things like that, like little things like that people don't think about. But then other things too with anything money related, corruption is just bound. Like, man, I don't know, bro.
A huge role in shaping milk policy in the United States.
Peter Welch finding rare agreement with President Donald Trump as the president signs bipartisan legislation to get whole and 2% milk back in schools. Here's the exchange between the two in the Oval Office today.
We should start with the Democrat in our midst. What do you think? Peter Welch. How about Peter Welch? And thank you very much for being here, Peter.
No, thank you. You know, our dairy farmers are so vitally important, and they have a way of life that transmits from one generation to another.
Did they make him drink it to... There's no way.
And it's tougher than ever for our dairy farmers in Vermont, our dairy farmers in Pennsylvania and others, South Carolina or here. But they're the lifeblood of the community. Nobody works harder and nobody does things that are better for our nutrition. And also for our kids. I'm in agreement.
Welch co-sponsored the bill. The law reverses guidance from a decade ago and gives thousands of schools around the country the option to put whole milk back on the menu. Leaders say that will open new markets to Vermont dairy farmers.
Organizations like the National Milk Producers Federation, the International Dairy Foods Association, and marketing programs like Milk Pep, which Milk Pep was responsible for the infamous Got Milk ad phase that went through. I remember in my childhood, it's fizzled out now, but it was a big thing back in the day. This was because of Milk Pep, which is a marketing program that's under these organizations as well. And come to find out, all of these groups have spent decades lobbying lawmakers and funding campaigns like Got Milk to increase milk consumption. Their goal was simple: keep demand high so dairy farmers and dairy companies can continue selling their product. And that created a lot of weird information and thoughts around milk in the zeitgeist, as I mentioned, to where people believe milk is probably more healthier than it is, or just drink it a lot more than needed, and don't understand that they can get their nutrients from other products that maybe agree with their stomach more. But I also had to take a step back when researching for this video because I realized I've been so ingrained in city life that I didn't know much of anything about farmers and how important they are because they provide food for us, which, you know, we need to survive. And I know that sounds like, duh, nigga, but when all you know about is getting food from grocery stores and restaurants, you can become disconnected from the process as a whole and the importance of farmers. So make sure to support your local farmers or whatever. But let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments. Also tell me about any story you may have.
Man, that milk, boy. Something about that milk. Very fishy. I ain't know it was that deep. That's crazy. I go eat a bowl of cereal after this too, so I'm telling you, milk is important. Stay on your milk. Stay on your milk, bro.